I'm used to this. This is theater lights.
Okay, everybody, I think we're ready to get started. Everyone can hear me okay? Perfect, thanks you. So my name is Steve Leone. I'm the editor of the Concord Monitor. I'm here with Laura Kiernan, who's part of the editorial board of the Monitor. So this is our third year of doing election forum coverage here. So I'd like to thank, first of all, the candidates for coming out. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'd also like to thank Concord High School for hosting us, ConcordTV for airing this. So you'll be able to follow our coverage on our website in the week to come. And I'm going to turn you over here to Laura, who's going to give you some of the ground rules.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Thank you, candidates. Just some ground rules, and then we'll get started. Each candidate is going to take questions from Steve and I. You'll have 2 minutes to answer those questions each, and I'll remind you about the timing. Dana Wormold from the paper is keeping the time, and he'll show you cards when you have to start slowing down and stop. We'll take questions from the audience and from monitor readers and pose them to all the candidates. And you'll have 1 minute for a closing statement before we finish and move on to the next forum. And if everybody in the audience could take a minute to make sure that your cell phones are off or on vibrate so that we're not interrupted. And I think we're ready to begin.
Okay, so I'd like to just go down and introduce everyone real quick. So we have everyone broken down here into District A, which is incumbent Jim Richards. In District B, we have Max Schultz and David Parker. And in District C, we have incumbent Pam Wicks and Gina Cannon. So thank you all for being here. So I think we all know that we're facing some serious issues in the Concord School District. So I think we'll start there. Many Concord parents say they've lost trust in the superintendent, members of the school board, administrators at Concord schools because of the way they address sexual assault allegations against a teacher, and the board's refusal to make public the report from an independent investigation. What steps would you take to regain public trust? And I ask that you please be specific in your answers. And we'll start with Jim and move that away.
Thank you very much. I understand that the community is angry and frustrated. I'm a parent. I have 2 boys in high school. I appreciate that. As a school board member, I can say that we have taken it very seriously and we've addressed the problems. We're working through in a process. What we have to do is defined not only by contracts but also by state law and federal law. And and I promise you, I am not going to break any law. I'm also very committed to the students and to the parents. But I'm also not going to do anything that will hurt, traumatize, or re-victimize any students. We have to put our students first. And I understand the need and the desire of people to see the report that we've commissioned. I have great confidence in the report. The investigator did a very thorough job. And we will release as much of the report as we possibly can without breaking a law or without hurting kids. With regards to establishing trust, I've always been open and listened to the parents and to the community members. I've collaborated with them and done our best to always conduct ourselves with integrity. I promise you that if I'm reelected, I'll do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to actually jump in real quick. I forgot to mention that Jim is running against Patrice Myers, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. So with that, Max, your answer, please.
I think we're definitely all well aware that the trust has been damaged between the public and the school board. I started this campaign because I was so frustrated by what I was seeing everywhere in the news and going to the public meetings very frustrated, seeing a lot of the kids very upset, parents upset, and it's going to take some time for the school board to get that trust back. I think the steps they need to take is to take action quickly, deal with the situation appropriately. Time is dragging on. I realize some things are difficult. I think the public wants action very quickly and appropriately. Have truthful communication with the public. If you say someone is on leave, they should be on leave. They should not be working. So if you want to establish trust, you should start by giving truthful, accurate communication and follow through with what you're going to do. So many of the failures are very public, and I understand the public doesn't have all of the information, but the information the public does have is that things have not been handled appropriately. I think one of the things that I want to do is provide at least my experience for 30 years in public safety management and being an administrator, especially myself, handling investigations and personnel issues and budgets and all of these things. I may not be an educator, but I understand how things should be handled as far as management. The board appears to put a lot of trust in people who did not follow through on their end of that trust, and there was not accountability. So they need to improve the accountability, the communication, take action that's appropriate, and do it quickly to protect the kids and to help the personnel that work there, all the teachers and staff who are taking such a punishment from this that's not appropriate for them. It's affecting everyone in the community. We need to do this quickly.
And David Parker.
Thank you. Trust is a really hard thing to gain, and it's easy to lose. I'm running for school board, not just because of the current situation, but because I think I can make a difference in having a seasoned experience in working in a wide range of educational settings, at the collegiate level, at the middle school level, running my own business for over 30 years, understanding special ed, understanding mental health. The district's in a world of hurt, and I feel badly about that and feel that in some ways I can help to heal that by speaking my mind and having open communication. I've been to most of the meetings since this spring, and it's painful. It's painful because these are really good people, dedicated people that are trying to do the right thing. And I know a lot of these people. I know a lot of them because I've worked with them. They're quality educators, but bad decisions were made. And then there seemed to be a lot of backpedaling. And again, people just didn't know what to do under the circumstances. Things were happening, and then they were told by council and other things that if you say this, this will affect that. I think as the public is really frustrated, we need to take this situation seriously, but things aren't going to necessarily come quickly. We're involved with, this involves labor, it involves unions, it involves legalities, it involves criminal justice system. And so because of that, we have to be really thoughtful in how we approach that particular issue. I do think again, some of these things will be solved and it will be aired out over time. Concord has great schools, and let's try to keep them that way.
Look at that. That's fun.
Pam Wicks.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this. It's my first time sitting at this table. I didn't have to do this the last time, so I take this very seriously. I am a mom of 3 boys in these schools. I've spent my summer working very, very hard with the board, trying to navigate these uncharted waters, per se, that when I ran for the board, I never in a million years would I have thought that this is what I would be doing. But it is what I'm doing because I have a job to do and that's my job. I understand that people are confused and hurt and angry, and they should be, and mistakes were made by us, and now that, you know, I sit back and reflect on that time, I can see where we could have been better communicating with the public about the things that we were doing, but, you know, this is unprecedented. I have never been involved in anything like this, and that's the honest truth, but I take it seriously. I'm working hard, and we're going to continue to work hard. We're working on our policies with our community partners. We're working very hard on finding a way to get information to you as quickly as possible, but it's a process, and processes take time, and I know it seems like from the outside, and I imagine if I were sitting in those seats too, I would be questioning that as well, but the process is happening, action is happening, and we're gonna get through this, and we're gonna work hard to do it as we have been all summer. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
And Gina Cannon.
So I guess I get the benefit of everyone having already said everything, but I've got to agree. I'm an inactive attorney. I don't practice law anymore. But the time frame of this, as much as the public wants to move quickly, once the students are safe, and I think that for the most part they are, the process has to slow down and catch up with the legal process. You know, we've all read stuff in the paper, but this gentleman who is accused of really horrific things, he has a right to due process in a court. People who are on leave have a right to due process under their contracts, under their negotiated contracts. There are state laws, there are federal laws, there are out-of-state laws because of Massachusetts. All of that is incredibly complex, and as much as everyone wants an answer right now, they want action right now, I think action was taken very quickly to protect the students once the story got out, but I think the rest of the process, unfortunately, has to take a longer time. I do think that the report should be made available to the public to the extent that it does not interfere with individual privacy rights. Teachers who testify or gave testimony or gave evidence, they have rights to privacy. I spoke with some of them this evening. They're afraid of retaliation. They don't want to be identified. This is a very, very difficult and touchy situation. On the other hand, I have to unfortunately disagree with my opponent that this is not a new thing for Concord School District. I've only been here 30 years, but my husband has been here his whole life. He's been raised in this district, and this is not a new thing.
Can I follow up with a quick answer from each of the candidates? I think we understand the complexity of it. It's an issue that has been faced around the country. But are you saying that the only thing that you can say to the community, to parents, is you have to be patient, you have to wait, we can't answer the questions? Isn't there some action can be taken, and how can the school board and the school administration really investigate itself? Could some other action be taken for an outside person to step in and be the ombudsman to the public on this and maybe settle things down? Mr. Richards? I think, yeah, Mr. Richards and Ms. Wicks, if you could follow up on that, and then the others as well. Thank you.
First, I want to assure you that we are taking action, and we have taken action. And I don't want to
Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, I don't want to minimize that. The first step in this was the meetings we had this summer and the trainings that we had at the end of the summer for the teachers are absolutely critical. We're going to need everyone. We're going to need parents, teachers, administrators, students, and the school board, all to contribute to be able to prevent something like this from happening again. And that starts with training, and it will continue.
Beyond that, I think
we have, the school board has taken action. We have contracted with a very capable and competent investigator who has is in the midst and hopefully very close to completing the report. With the information we have, the school board has taken action. As you know, both the superintendent and the principal are on a leave of absence based on the information that we received. But we took responsible action. We took action that is within the law, and we will continue to take action, and we will continue to do what needs to be done to resolve this as quickly and as fairly and basically as rightly as we possibly can.
Thank you. Ms. Wicks?
I mean, Jim said everything that I would say. We have been working really hard as a board to figure this out, and maybe this has happened in Concord before, but it hasn't happened in my time in Concord. Maybe I should clarify that. And I feel like I think that we are taking action, and I know it doesn't seem like it is because we can't really talk about it, and I can't tell you how frustrating it is to be able to go to school functions and have parents come and ask me what's happening, and there's not a whole lot I am able legally to say because of the rights that everyone has in the situation. But we're working. Steps are being put in place every day. We have boxes at the high school now for students to report any safety or incidents that they want to report. We took action once we received the report on the superintendent and the principal, and there's still more work to be done, but again, it's a process, and I feel like I'm going to say that a lot tonight, and I don't know what else to say. So,
Let me follow up on the question of a leave of absence. Everyone has seen the headlines about Mr. Sicca. The State Commissioner of Education today said that it looked like the community had been misled and that it might have undermined the investigation because Mr. Sicca was still dealing with people who may have had information to provide to the investigator. Can I get everybody's response to that, and in particular, when you say he and the superintendent are now on a leave of absence, that's been action taken subsequent to the first part of the report?
Is that for me?
Yes, it is. Thank
Certainly.
you. Sorry.
Yes, that is action that is taken subsequent to the first part of the report, and I, for legal reasons, can't go into more details than that.
Do you think the community was misled by the way the board described it in the first place?
I don't think the community was misled in the way the board described it. I think we were all misled to believe that Mr. Sicca was not interacting with the school, not able to contact. I feel the board was misled as well.
Who made that decision without telling the board?
I'm sorry?
That decision was made without informing the school board?
The decision was made, the decision was made for Mr. Sicca to go on a voluntary leave of absence, right? And we accepted that. Under that voluntary leave, he is still under the direction of the superintendent, but I think I don't have the authority to speak for the board, but I can speak for myself. And I can say that I did not think that Mr. Sicca in any way would have had contact with anyone at the high school or been involved in any way with the administration. And I feel that for him to have done so, if indeed that happened, I have not seen the emails, but to do that was inappropriate.
Mr. Schultz? We'd like to get a response from everybody on that, please.
Well, I've heard from other members of the board that they weren't aware. My concern, and I think I've stated already to the monitor and others, is that when you're outwardly saying that the principal is on leave, they're not there working. So I believe the board said that. Whether you say it's voluntary leave, and then someone asks the question, what does that mean? And you say, it's a good question, but I'm not going to answer it. I think that's a huge problem for the public trust that's already damaged. So one of the things I've been saying is speak the truth. If you decide that you want an employee to control their own course in an investigation, which I don't believe is appropriate at all, then at least tell people that that's what you're doing. But in this particular case, with the level of authority that this man has, I don't know how you could place him in a position where he's still able to work and somehow view that as having no consequence on an investigation. Because from what I understand, the employees were told by email that he's still there, still in charge, and they should reach out to him and feel free to do so at any time. So I don't know how the board didn't know this, I guess, and I'm not on the board. I hope to be there because I'd like to know the facts myself. I'd hate to think that they knew this and allowed it. I don't want the public to think that there's some sort of a conspiracy going on or anything like that. But certainly as a public person, it doesn't smell good, is I guess the way to say it. Is there's something very wrong when your words coming out, your official response is, he's on leave.
Okay.
But he's not.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
When I heard that, I was astounded, but then when I thought about it, it didn't surprise me. There's some systemic problems with the board and the administration in Concord, and I think it's been that way for a long time. You know, when I first started coming to the meetings, for example, the superintendent was sitting next to the president of the board like they were buddies. No, the board oversees the administration. And so there appeared to be this sort of collusion that they were all one big happy family, and that's really not the way it should be. So I would not be surprised to see more mistakes made because of this problem of who's in charge and where is the leadership. I mean, it's quite possible that Terry, unbeknownst to the board, told him he could work, and that was their interpretation. It was called special projects. It's astounding to me, but maybe that's what she did. And I think that more and more of these things happen if you don't have strong leadership and you don't ask the right questions. Pam has said you don't find yourself in these situations very often. Well, you do. If you're in education for a long time, as I have been, you find yourself in lots of these sort of situations, unfortunately, and you have to be really decisive. You have to really ask really good questions. You can't assume that people are going to do the right thing because you like them, you sit on the same boardroom with them. It doesn't work that way. We need some critical thinkers, and we need some people that will attack these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wicks, do you want to respond?
So what I feel like I need you all to know is that we sat in a meeting and we were told that he was going to take a voluntary leave of absence and he was not going to attend graduation. And we agreed that that was probably the best thing at the time because we had just decided that we were going to launch the independent investigation. And during that meeting, she said that that he would do some projects, special projects, because he was being paid and he was going to work. He was going to still do some work for the district. And we asked, would it be? We asked that it would not be involving students, involving staff, and what those special projects were explained to us. Like if a teacher was on leave, they would be doing grading, or they would be doing lesson plans, and they would not be interacting with the staff. So to say that we didn't know about, we knew he was working, we didn't know the extent of what that work was, and maybe that's a mistake on our part, but I felt pretty confident in the sense that, well, we're paying this guy, he's taking his leave voluntarily at the time, and once we placed him on leave as a board, that work ceased immediately.
So when you say we, do you mean the full board?
The full board. I am speaking, I mean, that's another thing that people I think forget is we don't act individually, we act as a board. So when I say we as a board agreed with that decision in a meeting.
When was this first brought to you? Was this back in June?
Back in June,
Okay.
before graduation.
And Mr. Richards, were you part of that meeting? So you knew back in June?
Yeah, Ms. Cannon? Well, yeah, okay, go ahead. Go for it.
Just to clarify.
Sorry.
You knew, I'm sorry. Were you aware back in June that Mr. Sicca was working on a limited basis, working on special projects for the district?
Yes, before graduation, when he went on a voluntary leave at that point, we were instructed that he would be doing some special projects for the superintendent that did not involve interaction with any of the students. following graduation, and at the end of the month, it was my impression that he was not doing any projects, but we were not informed of anything at that time.
Okay.
Do you feel you were misled by the superintendent about what Mr. Sicca would be doing? Both? I'd ask both.
At the time, no. In hindsight, it seems that way, doesn't it? I mean, there's no way around, I can't sugarcoat that, but at the time that it was brought to me, it made sense. I agreed with that decision. He was being paid. He was voluntarily leaving. He was voluntarily taking this leave. He wasn't placed on this leave, and we accepted that as a voluntary basis. And to me, it made sense as a paid district employee because he wasn't going to be interacting with students
Mr. Richards?
and staff.
Were you misled by the superintendent about what Mr. Sicca would be doing when he was on his leave of absence?
I think Pam said it well. At the first, I
Okay.
don't think I was, but yes, I do feel like
right.
we were misled.
Ms. Cannon, finally, we want to give you a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't speak for what people on the board knew and what they didn't know. But I can say I do understand the meaning of the English words leave of absence. It means you're not working. I'm not exactly sure why the board even got onto that slippery slope of what he was or wasn't doing. He was on leave of absence. That's it. No phone contact, no in the building, no in other buildings, no. You can have some conference room space in a different school, but don't go into your office. No, leave of absence, you're not there. The whole point of doing the investigation and having him go out on leave of absence, I don't care whether it was voluntary or involuntary, was that he was not supposed to be there at all, not involved while they were doing the investigation. A lot of these teachers are already scared enough to have talked to the investigator and are concerned about retaliation. I don't know how we trust the investigation at this point, because the teachers that I spoke to tonight, there was a new teachers forum, said they all assumed that the Principal Sicca would be back. Regardless of the leave of absence, regardless of everything, they assumed he would be back. And I don't think that meant that they felt free to speak their mind to the investigator. I think some of them did anyway, but leave of absence means you are not working. I have no idea why the board entertained the slippery slope of what projects he could be working on. Thank you.
So there was a push a while back to have the board take a vote of no confidence for the superintendent and the principal. Given that everyone on this stage is somewhat surprised and feels misled, should the board move to terminate the employment of Superintendent Forston and Principal Sicca? And I think we'll start on the far end of the table and come back this way.
Thank you. Well, not being on the board right now, I don't know what the board has done and what the board hasn't done. But both Superintendent Forston and Principal Sicca have certain grievance procedure rights under their contracts. But I do believe that the board should be looking at what those procedures are and moving them further along. I believe, I could be mistaken because I don't have the contracts in front of me, but I believe they both have the right to a due process hearing, which allows them to present their side of what happened and why they feel that they should be allowed to keep their jobs. But I think those hearings should be getting ever closer. I think there should be dates set. I think, that process should be going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Wicks.
So we read the report and we took action to place the superintendent and the principal on leave, and they have 30 days to appeal that decision, and so that's the reason for the leave of absence. So I think it's pretty clear that the board took action after reading the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Go this way.
This reminds me of our current state of affairs in America. We have a tragedy every day so we forget where this all started. The principal protected a very dangerous person, not once, not twice, maybe more than that. He didn't listen to the kids. The kids came to him. He didn't listen to them. Not only should the principal leave and the superintendent, but we really have to look very carefully at all the people that also collaborated with their own investigation as to whether it's appropriate they stay. They broke the law. It's a law that I've been aware of for 20 years. You don't do that. This is serious stuff. And why people are upset, as they should be, that people made the wrong decisions and then they sort of tried to cover it up. And there, you know, it's very hard if you're in a group of people and you have to judge your own colleagues. Mr. Sicker purposely asked somebody else to do the investigation on the perpetrator. Why? And it's the second time. I mean, it's a little scary to think what else he has not done or done. So, yeah, I think actually all those people that were complicit in doing their own investigation really ought to look as to whether they are going to be able to continue to gain the respect of the community and the students.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
I think it's easy for us in the public to say with absolutes, yes, fire them. I think it's easy for us to say that. I have the desire to know the truth. I would like to very much be on the board. I know that these folks are trying very hard. I've met with them many times. I know they're trying very hard to get through this. I don't want to come out and say, absolutely do this, do that, because I don't know all the facts, but from the facts that I do know, I don't like any of it. From people in charge putting children in harm's way, I don't like it. And I think if those are the facts, then absolutely they should be fired. And if the superintendent did not do her job and people were not trained properly and not held accountable, and you place people on voluntary leave that they control on their own, and if all these facts are absolutely found to be true, yes, because a public job like this, it has the public's trust. You don't have a right to a job like this. You are privileged to have a job like this. I'm privileged to have my job. I'm grateful for it every day, working for the public. I don't think anyone that works for the public is above that and should feel that they don't answer to anyone. So from my public perspective and the facts that I know that seem to be true, I would say yes, that they should be. But I would reserve an actual judgment as a person trying to be on the board to know the actual facts. But I would like I would love very much to know the facts and to help these folks make consistent, fair decisions that are swift as possible and for the public safety of the children, for the benefit of the educators so that they can move on and we can get some good leadership in place that knows how to deal with this. You can't let people run the house without control, and that's what this is.
Thank you, Mr. Richards.
In my day job, I manage a large retail business, 575 million. We have about 1,300 full and part-time employees, and they are public employees governed by a contract. I understand the proper way that we do investigations. I cannot comment because that's the law. I can't state what is and prejudge because I am a sworn board member. So I can only say that we are following the legal process. We are following the contractual process properly. We are taking the steps that we need to do every day to assure the safety and the security of our students. But you're asking me to make a prejudgment, and that's not fair. That's not the process. We have to do this correctly. And I understand the need for communication to the public and to the students and to the teachers. I certainly think we can do a better job at that, but there is, we need to do things by the law. We need to do things correctly. We need to do things in conjunction with the Concord Police Department. And we will continue to do that, but we will work as swiftly and we will work as expeditiously as possible. And we will communicate as much as we can legally and contractually so as not to jeopardize or cause any issues with the ongoing investigations and with the process we're in.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Before we have closing statements, we do have a question from the audience that we wanted to address. And this is directed to Mr. Parker, Ms. Cannon, and Mr. Schultz. You've all been vocal on the issues, tough issues, that have confronted the district and the school board and the superintendent over the past 6 months or so. How would you propose that you, if elected, would come to the school board and be able to interact collegially with people that you've been critical of in public, in a professional way, obviously? How do you do that? How do you, as this person asked, respond professionally, calmly, and rationally, and maintain confidentiality? How do you do that if you're elected to a new board with a lot of problems on their hands? We'll start with Mr. Schultz. Yes, thank you. Then we'll do closing statements.
Thank you for the question.
Sure.
I think I've already done that. So I've been to a lot of the meetings. I've met with the board members. I've talked with them. I think we get along very well. I like to work in a spirit of collaboration and finding solutions to problems together. I am not a person who overreacts to things. I mean, I certainly am not afraid to express my opinion and my life experience that I can use to help. But I've already met with the board members many, many times. I've talked with them, and I think that we could have a good relationship trying to solve a lot of these problems. So it's really my personality is I like to fix things and I like to work collaboratively.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
If anyone knows me, they know that I have my strong opinions, and I let people know that. This isn't a kumbaya moment. This is a time where you have to be respectful of your colleagues. The role I was playing as I was critical of this board was a role as a citizen and as an observer of what was going on. Once you move into a board, and I've sat on many of them, yes, you have to be a collaborator, and yes, you have to work with people. Yes, you have to be a very good listener, and you have to be a problem solver. And I agree with Max that I feel like those relationships can be developed. But if my colleagues aren't criticizing me when I make a mistake, if everyone's going to yes me, then I shouldn't be on the board, because that's not what I'm going to do. If I disagree with my colleagues, they're going to hear about it. If I agree with them, I'll agree with them. But that's who I am, and it's who I've always been. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Ms. Cannon?
So, I mean, some people may have seen me at some of the school board meetings. Like Max and Dave, I went to a lot of those meetings. But I don't think that the Concord School District can work its way out of the problems that we've got without civil conversation about difficult topics. It's something that's sorely lacking in a lot of places today, is civil conversation when people disagree. People can certainly disagree. I disagree with some of the decisions the board has made. I'm sure they have some more information. They may disagree with me. But if you can't have a civil discussion about why you disagree with somebody, you cannot come to a central position that is either a compromise that everyone can live with or just a rational discussion around problem solving. My preference would be for the school board to act like a team. They're a team to work with the administration, the teachers, and the students to make Concord High the best, or the Concord School District the best district it can be.
Okay, thank you. I think we're ready for closing statements. So you have a minute each just to say one last thing, and we're going to start with Ms. Cannon on the end.
So I was a reluctant candidate. Everyone who's asked me, why are you doing this? I'll admit I was a reluctant candidate. I went to these school board meetings. I heard things that I could not believe. My thought was, where did the common sense go? Some of the information that was given to us by the school board and the administration were things that I absolutely could not believe was happening. And I stood up and I said, okay, I've got to be part of the solution. We can't continue with things as usual. There's got to be a change on the school board. There's got to be a change in the relationship between the school board and the administration. The school board must oversee the administration. They shouldn't be sitting with the administration. It's time for a change. This has been going on for years in this district, and it's got to stop. It's got to be students first. Student safety, student academics. Thank you.
And Ms. Wicks?
I wrote mine out because I didn't want to stumble, so I'm going to read from my statement. What is important for the voters to know about me is that I am on the school board because I want to make a difference in my boys' school. I am passionate about public education, and I care deeply about the direction our school district moves. I have advocated both locally and at the state level on important public education issues, including supporting the need for a better adequacy formula and stopping the so-called voucher bill. I spend countless hours in our schools volunteering because of that, I'm able to see firsthand the challenges that our students, staff, and administrators face every day. As I reflect on the recent events and the work that we have done, I believe we did the best that we could. We all worked hard. We had to navigate through uncharted waters, and then adding to the difficulties of the work that we had to do was the inability to discuss or make any decisions unless we're in a meeting with legal counsel or a non-public meeting. I understand and feel compassion for people who are demanding transparency and accountability. As a board member with 3 kids in this district, I have a vested interest in that as well. I will continue to fight to release any information that we are legally allowed to share. I want my kids' school to be the best schools in the state. We are a great school district. We have great teachers. We have great academic programming at our high school. I'm proud to send my boys to this school district, and I'm proud to have served on this board, bringing kindergarten, early education opportunities for our youngest learners, and beyond. It's been an honor, and if this is the end of my time, well, I just want you to know that I thank you all, and I appreciate it, but I hope that this isn't the end for me. Thank you.
Mr. Parker.
When this started, when I started attending meetings in the spring and things were going on, I didn't contemplate joining the board. I'm busy. I've been a member of many boards, and I'm not at the beginning of my career or just starting things out. But when I saw the type of things happening that were happening, I felt like, boy, you know, if I were up there, I might be able to help. Might be able to solve these problems. So the fact that I'm sitting here is not inconsistent with who I've been my whole life. I've dedicated a lot of my life to kids and families, and I'm passionate about it. And I thought that, you know, if I were on that board, maybe I could have that perspective of mental health that I bring to it, that it goes beyond just the problems we're having now. There's some systemic problems that I could help to solve. And that's what sort of motivated me. I know this too shall pass, but what I know won't pass unless we get some very thoughtful, forward-thinking people is that this district will not move forward, and it needs to. This is a great city. I've dedicated my life to many of the activities, nonprofit agencies, so the fact I'm sitting here is not unusual at all, and I would appreciate your vote.
Mr. Schultz.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think I've made it clear on my Facebook page or my website, if you've seen it, that I originally was motivated by a lot of the things I saw that I felt I could help with, and I still feel very strongly that I want to help the district to get through this crisis, deal with the situation, and then move on to the more, the issues, the regular issues of, the schools and repair of, rebuilding of Runlet, some of the other issues that really need to be addressed. And really they need someone that can talk about all the good things that go on in the schools once this is over and done with, and they need to have a person who can do that well. So I would encourage them to find someone to do their public media outreach for them. But you know, I think I've been really disappointed by the things we've seen in the media like anyone else. And what they need is someone who has 30 years of public safety administration that can help sort through some of these serious issues, help them work on policies, dealing appropriately with employees, and making sure that they can earn the public trust back. Thank you.
And Mr. Richards.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Monitor for hosting this and for inviting us all to be able to share our views and to answer questions. I'd like to thank everybody here who took the time to come down and to listen, and to everyone who may be watching who is vested and interested in our elections. I am running for the school board because I care about our kids and I care about our community. We need to have a strong school district if the city of Concord is going to grow and to prosper, and it's going to take all of us to work together, to hold each other accountable, and to move forward. When I first ran for the school board, I spoke to parents, and they talked to me about security and safety in our schools. I have been committed to putting students first and to enhancing the security and the safety. I've worked to strengthen the school's security here in the high school with electronic locks, and I will continue to do so. My experience in business, given my knowledge of budgets and of finance, and my willingness to listen and to collaborate is what makes me, I think, the best person to be the representative of District A. I promise I will continue to listen to parents and to students and to the community. I promise to keep asking the hard questions, and I promise to put students first and always work for the best Concord School District. Thank you.
Okay, so we thank you all for coming out and spending the time with us, really do. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, may actually be closer to 4 minutes, and we're going to be back with the mayoral candidates and the at-large city council candidates.
seats. Okay, all right. Okay. All right. Are we ready to get started? I'd again ask everybody to make sure your cell phones are off or in quiet mode. Again, I'm Laura Kiernan from the editorial board at the Monitor. This is Steve Leone, who's the editor of the paper. I'm going to introduce the candidates for mayor and for 2 at-large seats on the city council. Mayor Jim Boulay, Linda Ray Banfill, and for the mayor's seat, and for at-large candidates, Byron Champlin, Edith Chason, and Nathan Fennessy. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We're going to follow the same format. Steve and I are going to ask some questions. Each of the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer the questions from Steve and I. We ask you to pay attention to our colleague Dana Wormold, who's got the time warning cards, yellow and red. And then we'll take some, if we have any questions from the audience or follow-ups that Steve and I have, and then you'll have 1 minute for closing. So I'm going to begin, I think. We'll start with, from left to right, with Mayor Boulay. And I think that everybody can answer this question. And I've been asked to speak slower and louder. So everybody, which is a shock to me, but I'll do it. Mr. Mayor, Concord has made a significant investment in economic development, and many candidates in their Q&As with us have pointed to the need for more economic development. One thing, of course, the city has done was conduct a national search for an economic development director who's been in place for 2 years to help grow the tax base. Regarding job growth and economic development, what's been accomplished? Can you give us some specifics?
Well, first of all, before I start, let me first say thank you to the Concord Monitor for hosting this, along with ConcordTV for covering, and for Concord High School for opening their doors. Economic development has been the cornerstone, I think, of my term as mayor, and I don't think you need to look far. You don't need to look much further than the Main Street in Concord. And really what we've done at being willing to make investments sometimes where things were a little tough, but we continued forward. And what's nice about sometimes when you make the investment in your community, it pays off. So I think when you look at the growth of Main Street, for one, and what has actually occurred from that, the folks who have actually wanted to come downtown, so you now have buildings like Love and Smile, you have businesses like Gibson's, which have grown, but now you're seeing growth from people outside of Concord, like Elm Grove. The projects on Pleasant Street and on State Street, you can see housing is starting to occur. But we have made investments for when you want to grow and be successful economic development-wise, you need to continue to invest in our community. And if you look at, we've been able to keep very low water and sewer rates, but we continue to invest in that infrastructure. And most importantly, which I hear from most of you, is we have been able to successfully invest in roads in the community. Each year, in fact, last year, we were able to add more dollars to invest. But this coming year, thanks to the legislature, we'll be receiving for the next 2 years another $740,000 that will invest in infrastructure, will all help towards further growth in our community.
Thank you. Ms. Banfield?
Thank you all for coming, and I'm very privileged to be running for mayor for the second time. Whether I win or not, it's been a win-win situation. I've made friends. I'm having a wonderful time. I see Concord a little differently. I see the drug deals that go down. I see the people walking around stoned on Main Street. I hear people talking about how they don't come downtown because nobody wants old people downtown. Main Street is not safe. It's beautiful. It wins awards. I personally was on my way to the police department a year ago on the Kentucky Derby to report a drug deal. I had pictures of it going down on Kennedy Lane. I tripped, fell, had traffic backed up in both directions, 4 trips to the hospital. I have pictures of that not safe street. One of my biggest complaints, problems, issues, is the people who go into the cemeteries. They're open 24/7. They're leaving condoms and hypodermic needles in that cemetery. It's Blossom Hill and Calvary. This is not right. That is sacred ground. The people who take care of, who maintain that, are doing a wonderful job. There are 7 cemeteries in Concord. That's the one I go by when I go home. When I see several cars coming down behind the cemetery, behind the chapel at 10 or 12 at night, something's wrong. Maybe just an increased police presence could do that. Concord, when I came down here, it was, I've always considered it a bigger small town that happens to be the state capital. We used to walk around, look in the store windows, not much to see in the financial district. It's changed. There are things I like about it. I think the tables outside, people bringing their dogs down are wonderful.
Any further development that you'd like to see?
I can't hear you.
Any further economic development that you would?
I still can't hear you.
Any further?
Well, the taxes seem to go up and up and up. And I'm not talking about the school board, but 60 or 70% of my money goes for the school board. I'm not getting much bang for my buck. It's an investment in education. I have no children in school, but this is our future. I'm not happy about that. I don't have a choice.
All right, thank you. Mr. Champlin,
Yeah, thank you. And I also want to join.
can you take the mic? Thank you.
Of course, I'm happy to. Thank you. I also want to join the mayor in thanking the Concord Monitor for this forum, thanking Concord TV for broadcasting it, and thanking Concord School District for making this facility available, and also all the folks here in the audience and the folks at home who are taking the time to learn about the candidates. And I hope every one of you goes out and votes on November 5th. I second also what the mayor said about our downtown and a lot of the progress that we've made, a number of new housing opportunities we brought downtown. We also recently, in the past 12 months, brought in a new manufacturer of siding and roofing as a new employer to the city. I think that's a very positive step forward. Concord as a city has great advantages. We also have some challenges that we have to overcome. One is the nature of the buildings we have available to house manufacturing and business. Current manufacturers require a certain ceiling height. We're challenged with having a number of buildings that fit that requirement in the city. We also have to look at the workforce. One of the things that I've advocated for is encouraging new housing opportunities. And the reason for that, one of the main reasons for that, is because without workers, we can't attract new business, and we can't retain existing business. I remember talking to an employer just a few months ago who had hired a young professional to work in the city, but that young woman could not find an affordable place to live, and so was couch surfing at a friend's house until she could find an appropriate place to live. So housing has to be part of our economic development strategy. Thank you.
Ms. Chason?
Thank you. I'd like to ditto the remarks and thank you to everyone who is here and everyone who has helped put this together. I agree that the economic development that is quite visual to us is the Main Street and, the surrounding areas with developers who are doing their best to work on our housing situation. I do have concerns that we continue to preserve our community, our culture, our identity, and who we are as Concord as a city. I would be concerned about trying to copy other cities. I think we are our own as a capital city. I think that we have a lot more opportunities that we can develop, but I don't want to sacrifice the historic nature. In addition to being the go-to for growth in entertainment and food and all of those things that are a part of our Main Street and other pockets of the city, I'd like to really lobby for let's hang on to some of the culture that makes us unique and inviting to others.
Thank you. Mr. Fennessy?
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody as well for showing up tonight, the Monitor, Concord TV. I think this is a great opportunity for everybody to get out and see the various candidates in the municipal election. With respect to economic development, I want to thank Mayor Boulay and the council for the great work I think they've done with Main Street. I work on Main Street. I lived through, the pains of the 2-year process. It wasn't easy, but, the end result has been fantastic. And I've seen a huge uptick in activity on Main Street. Before I used to say you could get a table at any restaurant on Saturday night by 7 o'clock. We usually put the kids to bed and we try and sneak out. Now, there's much more activity going on downtown every day of the week, which is fantastic. As far as next steps, I think the big places for future development are, connecting up stores and Commercial Street. That area, I think, is ripe for development. It's probably a little bit further down the road once we see what happens with the I-93 expansion. But as activities increased on Main Street, there's obviously a lot more traffic. I'm sure everybody's seen with the construction that's gone on with North State Street, things get backed up pretty easily. And so we need to work on providing another alternative and developing that as a new commercial district. The other thing I'm excited about is Exit 17, seeing if that can move forward. Getting a supermarket up there in Pennacook would be fantastic. I'm intrigued by the conceptual project that's been proposed for Exit 13 and the potential opportunity for a multi-use, which I think is really important to echo the point Byron made with respect to housing. I think that's one of the big challenges we have coming down the road. And so to the extent we can focus on projects that are both commercial and residential so we can increase the supply of affordable and safe housing, I think it'll be much better for us.
Thank you very much.
So I have a quick follow-up, but I'm going to keep this actually just to the 2 mayoral candidates, Mr. Boulay and Ms. Banfield. And this is kind of piggybacking on the previous question, but really specific to jobs. How are we doing as a city in bringing good, high-paying jobs to Concord? Mr. Champlin referenced one company, but if we can get specific on who's setting up in Concord and why.
Great question. Jobs has been very difficult, and I'm going to segue back to where we were. I want to talk just to kind of bring home the importance of having a really positive school district. Recently, as I reach out to employers from other parts of the state, when you pick up the morning paper, when you turn on your local news, and when you see headlines about your local school district, it becomes very difficult to grow that tax base and to bring people here. Where we are completely separate from the school district, it is vital. If we are to grow and have strong economic development in our community, we need a strong, healthy school system. That's number one. Number two, to have a good, strong growth in employment, we, as Councilor Champlin, I think more than adequately, excellently point out, housing is a critical piece to that. And as the prices, they've gone up in terms of rentals and such, my own kids are having a tough time finding a place to live here as well as to work here. So I think we have done well as we could to bring in what we can. If you go to places along Exit 16, we've seen growth. But as I think Attorney Fennessey's pointed out, what we're really looking for is we've set the table for a lot of these things to happen. And when you look at what can happen at Exit 13, what's going to happen at Exit 17, and this community needs to have a real conversation as to what do we want our access to the river to be around Exit 14. And that land that sits around Stickney Ave is probably, in my opinion, the most desirable piece of land up and down I-93 for growth and tax base expansion. So we have a lot of things coming our way that we're going to need really community conversations about.
Okay, Ms. Banfield, if you could also answer about specifically jobs in Concord.
Well, I can't answer the way the mayor did, or Byron did. But if I came down here July 14th, 1977, knowing what I know about Concord, I wouldn't come now. I might live in Manchester or I'd stay in Conway. I see a very different side of, I would not come down here. There's human trafficking up at the Sewells Falls Bridge. Prostitutes are up there. I believe in calling it as it is. There are panhandlers downtown, kids walking around stoned. I think those issues need to be addressed, and I don't think they are. And things happen that don't get reported to the police, and you don't have to like what I say, but I'm calling it the way I see it.
Thank you. Let me follow up on something that the mayor mentioned, and we'll ask everybody to respond. In this regards to school board and whether there should be oversight on the part of the city over the school board in some way. Right now, and this is a discussion I think most people know has gone on here for decades. Every once in a while it pops up. Should the city council allow the school board, the only one in the state, I believe, that has complete fiscal autonomy over their budget? But other matters have arisen too now for consideration. Should the city have more oversight over the school board or its activities now? We'll start with you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think the answer is no. I think the way it's set up now actually can work. In fact, it has worked extremely well. And I don't think you need to look much further than some of the past chairs of the school board who we've had excellent working relationships with in the past. We have people forget we have 2 school districts in this community. And to actually make some changes, you have to have a legislative change, you have a charter question on the ballot. We're 2 distinct separate entities. I think what the city council does in looking at the municipal side, we do an excellent job. We make sure that those roads are plowed so that the kids can get to school safely and all the other things associated with it. But I can't emphasize enough that we need a positive experience with our school district because it directly affects our ability in the city council to expand the tax base, to take the pressure off of all of us in dealing with taxes.
Thank you. Ms. Banfield?
Thank you. The law has been broken. No one is above the law. Chief Osgood said the law has been broken. You as a lawyer should know, no one is above the law. I wouldn't if I had a kid in that school, it would be fixed bayonets in charge. Take no prisoners. The girl who spoke the truth was punished. Other people have been punished for speaking the truth. What message is that giving to the kids?
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Champlin?
Just so you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I married the lawyer.
Oh, okay. I thought you were. Have you sunk so low?
Mr. Champlin?
I don't know if these 2 are finished.
I don't know.
Yes, we are.
We're going to move on.
We're being civil, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have reservations about the city taking oversight of the school board. I have to say, first of all, I suspect that statutorily the only authority we would have would be budgetary and not administrative.
We've actually gotten a suggestion that the charter maybe should be changed.
Yeah. I don't know how the city benefits by adding an extra layer of bureaucracy over the school board. Right now, the school board has the toughest bosses in the city, and those are the same bosses that I have. That's the voters. I think that we have to be careful about trying to find a quick solution to more complex problems. When I look at our neighbors to the south and our neighbors to the north, where the school board are overseen by the mayor, the board of mayor and aldermen, and the city council, respectively, I see school districts that are in much tougher shape than we are. We are absolutely in a moment of crisis right now. But those 2 school districts, and I used to work with the Manchester within the Manchester School District as a philanthropic funder with a variety of nonprofits that provide programs through the schools. Those school districts are in perpetual crisis. And so that's not necessarily a model that I think we should emulate.
Thank you. Ms. Jason?
So I agree that it's not necessarily something that we want to aspire to. I do think that working collaboratively and supporting each other is what we should do. I also think that our voters, we need to have more feedback from them on how they believe this structure should work and really get an idea for again, not just our opinion, but the opinion of the community and how they think that could work better. I do like the fact that Concord has somewhat of a different model, and I do think that this council has come out and made clear that they are concerned about what's happening in the school district. They're concerned, they're supporting the safety of the students. So in essence, the message is the same. We're both looking for what can we do to keep students safe, what can we do to start listening more and providing appropriate action as we can, and being transparent in that, and as far as we can without breaking any privacy laws.
Thank you. Mr. Fennessy?
Thank you. So I would agree with pretty much what everybody said already. I would not support the city council taking over oversight to whatever degree of the school board at this point. I think the mayor raised a very good point that I think people often forget, that we have 2 school districts in this city. If you want to go and change the charter and change the manner in which perhaps you have oversight over the school board, that's one thing. But you can't just fold in 2 districts and expect the city council at this point to take over. It's just, it can't happen as a matter of law. So it's a much bigger conversation if someone's going to go down that road. Large, obviously, and I knew if the voters didn't like what I did, they would vote me out, and they did. So I think that's the best way to have real oversight over the school board is to continue to have them directly liable to the voters. I mean, if you look at other cities where the city council exercises control or the mayor exercises control, the school board can always say, well, don't blame me, you know, blame the city council or the mayor or whoever who cut the budget that I voted for. Right now, if you don't like what the school board's doing, vote the people out. And unlike the city council, every year you get to vote people out. You get to vote at least one person, and every 3 years you get to vote 3 people out. So,
All right, thank you. Let me follow up on one more question on economic development. The I-93 widening project will really change the face of Concord. That will be the gateway to our city for hundreds of thousands of visitors. What's your vision for what that should look like, and how much input should we have as the city in that? Mr. Fennessy, why don't we start with you?
Sure. That's one of the things that really got me interested in running for the city council. I don't know how much people are really aware of the impact. I mean, this is going to change our geography for the next 50 to 100 years. And so I think it's really incumbent upon the state and the city, to the extent we can, to get the community involved, to get their input, to have visioning sessions, to try and figure out what it is that we want. I want to make sure, number one, that however the project is done, that it enhances and complements the work that we've done on Main Street, that to the extent possible it enhances our connection to the river, and I want to make sure that it facilitates our ability to develop those areas like Store Street and Commercial Street, which I think are really the next areas of development off of all the good work that we've done on Main Street.
Thank you. Ms. Jason, what are your thoughts on I-93? What should it look like?
So again, this project is near and dear to my heart for a number of reasons. I've been a resident in Concord for 33 years, and 93 is very close to my house. I have to cross the river to get to work. I've been doing that for a number of years, and I've watched as the last time they worked on 93, I was thinking to myself, oh yay, we're going to have additional lanes so that I can travel safely and bypass through parts of the city without, taking my life in my hands. That didn't happen, so I was surprised. So this time, as the conversation has come up, I have been trying to attend meetings and read more about what the plan is. And I agree that we need to focus on what really is going to improve our economic development situation, not take away from it. And I think that is the conversation that is being had. And I also think that this project is pretty far along, and they're trying to wrap it up at this point and make some final decisions. And there's still opportunity to have conversation on what that looks like. At the same time, again, I support the widening of it to the extent that it's long overdue. That when I try to get bypass from my home to my work, I like that extra lane so that I can get in, on and off without, saying a prayer as I go through. That's kind of my approach to that. Whatever happens is going to be disruptive to those who live in the city. I've looked at the plans. I've looked at, for 1 or 2 years, there's going to be, you're going to have to drive around, various exits. So I would just say that, as City Council, we should look ahead to that and try and do some planning around that project as well.
Thank you. Mr. Champlin?
Thank you, and thanks for raising that question. 10 or 15 years ago, I sat on an ad hoc group that met over at Oren Reno when it was in Eagle Square, or the Eagle Hotel, rather, and we looked at possible ways to reconnect with the river, given a potential I-93 expansion or modification. And a number of the plans that came out of that, which were very blue sky, are still around today. So I've been engaged in this issue of what do we do, how do we maximize state expansion plans for I-93 for some time. I agree with Edith. I think that whatever happens is going to occur with a little bit of pain. I think that some of the more visionary ideas would require major rethinking of the intersection at exit 14, would, in my mind, take the opportunity to realign the current used railroad lines so that they are parallel with and aligned to the highway in order to free up the maximum amount of developable land on that tract. I also think that the current intention of the city, which is witnessed by the $100,000 in the current fiscal year budget to begin planning for the Store Street extension, really will start to point the way to the opportunity to create a new or a second Main Street by way of Store Street, a boulevard that is going to have commercial, retail, mixed use, hopefully mixed income, upper story residential development. And that really can broaden our tax base, take the pressure off of the local homeowner taxpayer, and pay real dividends for the city of New Hampshire. City of Concord, we are in New Hampshire, I mean, let's face it. But, I look just farther north of that. There are those in the city who remember when Commercial Street was largely an abandoned lumberyard. Today, the development along there that was guided by my predecessors on the city, this fiscal year is anticipated to generate $969,000 in tax revenue that will go to pay for city, county, Concord School District, and state taxes. And that's what we should aspire to.
Thank you. Ms. Banfield? How do you feel about the I-93 wide?
What was the question, please?
How do you feel about the I-93 corner, the highway change?
Widening of I-90?
Well, I'm not
93.
driving right now. People don't like it. And these are the ones who use it.
Right.
I realize we have to have good roads, but I'm not qualified to make an answer.
Fair enough. Thank you. Mayor Boulay?
Well, thank you for bringing up this. This is, I believe, on the municipal side, this is the most important project we can talk about. And I'm going to use all 2 minutes, so hold on. First of all, it is not too late. This is not too far along. This is one of the things that I think I bring to the table in terms of strengths is my relationship with state and state agencies. I've worked with the Department of Transportation, and they have put a 2-year reprieve on this. Now, probably the primary reason is they lack funding, and you can talk to legislators about that. But they put a 2-year reprieve. We cannot sit on our hands for the next 2 years. We have to actively engage. There have been many, many meetings that we've had regarding I-93. But I have to tell you, I need you to show up. I need you to participate. You don't want us making these decisions. You need to be there, and you need to help us make these decisions. Because as Councilor Champlin and others have pointed out, this is a project that is not designed for the next year or 2 years or 3. This is 50 and 100 years down the road. And what we do with I-93 is going to have such an impact on our community. How do we want to engage with that river? How do we want to engage between the east and the west side? But let's go through it real quick. Exit 12, you see development going on there. Do we want roundabouts there? Is that something you want as you get off the ramps? Exit 13, you see a proposal for a multi-use development off exit 13, which is going to be wonderful, provide access to the river and such. But if you get off that exit in the morning, you know the traffic stacks and backs up on the highway. If they're going to make that correction, how does it affect the correction onto Turnpike Road? Exit 14 and 15, as Linda has really well pointed out, it is taking your life in your hands because the intersections are so close together. But it's so much more than transportation. McFarland Johnson, the engineer representing the state who did the design, they did an excellent job. I'll be the first to tell you. They designed a highway which efficiently and effectively moves traffic through Concord. Is that what we want? I would say no way. I don't need all those lanes. In fact, I believe that this city has a very different view. I don't want people flying through this community. I want them getting off the highway. I want them coming down into Concord. I want them to spend their money, eat here, buy things, enjoy our community, and hopefully they'll want to come back and stay. But there's so many pieces to this. It's not just the access to the river. It's what do we envision Stickney Ave to be? I know the red thing's up. What do we want Stickney Ave? How do we provide bike and pedestrian safety? How do we make sure that we take that Merrimack River Greenway Trail and incorporate it all along the highway and along the river? I'll stop.
Thank you.
I can keep going if you want.
We know that. Thank you.
I have to say, I agree with you, Jim. Now, don't faint. I don't have smelling salts.
No, look at it. Can you feel the love right here?
Okay, so on this next question, I think we're going to cut it down to a minute so we can get through it fairly quickly. But this is a topic that we've talked about a lot tonight, and that's transparency. So with that in mind, Concord's one of 3 New Hampshire cities that doesn't give its residents the ability to review the cost of a union contract prior to a city council vote. Okay, and why is this important? Because these contracts make up a really large share of city spending. So, for example, the city of Lebanon requires 3 presentations and a public hearing. Recently, the Concord School Board allowed the contracts to be seen prior to a vote, but the city of Concord, you don't get to see the details of that contract. Why is that the case? Shouldn't city residents know what they're paying for before they're made to pay for it? And I'll start with the mayor.
Well, I appreciate you asking the question. So let's make some news tonight, okay? Here we go. Transparency has been an important part of the council and its activities. I think we are extremely transparent in how we conduct our business. But I think you're right. You have identified a weakness, and that contracts are treated and have been treated differently than every other item that we vote on in the city. So, at my request and the support of the council, we sent the item off to our Fiscal Policy Committee, which reviews these items. They did an extensive review of all the cities and how each and every city takes up their contracts. And there is a wide range of how the different cities take up contracts. So, after that discussion, the council had its own discussion as a body of the whole, and we have decided, and you will see, in fact, there's a contract that will be coming up on the next contract that, because you're absolutely right, it used to be that we would take a vote on a tentative agreement, then we'd bring it up, and we'd vote on it that night. I don't think it was fair to the public to do that. So we now will have our legal counsel, along with our chief negotiator, they will write a report. The report will include all the cost items, because remember, the council only votes on cost items. We do not vote on all the other things, we vote on cost items. And that's where the taxpayers need to be able to have their input. That report will be given on the consent agenda. It will be given on the Wednesday prior, so the exact same time that every councilor gets that information, the public will have access to the exact same thing. So I know that your reporters will report on that, and that everybody in the community will have opportunity to call their counselor to let them know exactly what they think, if this is a good contract, a bad contract, or if something could be improved or not improved. But that is a change that will be taking place, and you'll see the first one and maybe even 2 at the Wednesday prior to the November meeting.
Okay, so now that we have some news here, what's some reaction? Is this good for the city?
Just one second, I will get it together. I think the city manager has much too much power. That's the way the system is. I think his reviews should be open to the public and transparent. I think the people of Concord responsibility. Don't speak up, but you don't like what they do, then you're just as guilty as, I mean, it's like not voting. And one more thing, I just want to say, I am so proud of the first responders we have. I have personally been trucked off to Concord Hospital in ambulances about 15 times in the last 4 or 5 years, only once because I tripped on the road on Main Street. When was the last time you thanked a first responder for putting their lives on the line? Or took the trouble to vote, or come to City Council and voice your opinion? They need to know that. We have good people working, but they can't do it all. They need report responses from you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to say that I agree with Linda that it's incumbent upon the voters to pay attention, to ask questions, and to be aware. And I can assure you that as a city councilor for almost 6 years now, my constituents have never hesitated to reach out to me. But I also want to thank the monitor for asking the mayor that question first, because I didn't really want to scoop him since I'm on the Fiscal Policy Advisory Committee that he referred that issue to. And I think it was appropriate that the mayor announced that perspective change. You know, I support transparency. I think it's sometimes difficult. There are some things that we do have to do in private when we can't, when we have to have non-public meetings regarding issues around, property purchases, contract negotiations, things of that nature. But to the fullest extent possible, I support transparent government, because I think a transparent government is healthy.
I would like to add to that, though, and of course I am one of those constituents that have bugged Brian Byron several times. What happens when you have transparency and you have these reports that go out is sometimes those who are receiving the information don't quite understand what it means, what the ramifications are. They might see a high cost of something but don't understand what's behind that cost. So with transparency, again, I would encourage some education and information for the public to go with that, so that, again, as they respond to counselors and ask questions, that they have a little bit more to go on. And that's kind of my platform, is let's make sure that we don't just talk about things, but we educate the behind it, the root of it as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fennessy.
I'm very happy to hear the news. From my perspective, it's long overdue. If you look at the city budget, I'll just, police and fire, that's 60% of the budget. If you're not allowing the public to see the terms of the deals that you've negotiated before you vote on them, what input can you have? And so I think it's very important. I think that the council should be putting that information out there so that the public can have an opportunity to review what the monetary impact's going to be, to provide input to their counselors, and so that the counselors had the benefit of public input. I previously was the negotiations chair when I was on the school board, and we put everything out there, not just the monetary stuff, but everything else that was in a contract, and we got input. And I think that's very important. I think in order for the council to really be responsive to the citizens of the community, you need to provide community members that information so that they can not just read the next day that you've just approved a contract.
Thanks everybody very much. We have closing statements now, 1 minute from each candidate. So we have one more forum left to go. Mr. Fennessy, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you everybody again for coming out. I'm running for city council because I want Concord to continue to be a place that's desirable to live, work, and raise a family. I think we have a fantastic city. I think we've made a lot of great strides. We've done some great development. I want to continue that. I want to continue a path of increasing the property tax base. In particular, I spend my days as a litigation attorney solving problems. And so that requires a few things. One, you got to be willing to listen. Two, you got to be creative. Three, you got to be willing to negotiate and to compromise. I think those are all really important skills to have on the council, and I hope I can have your support on November 5th so I can join the council.
Thanks very much. Ms. Chason?
I am a newcomer to city politics. I am running for office to preserve our community culture and identity. I believe we can and should balance our growth that's vital to our capital city while maintaining the small town community atmosphere that makes Concord unique and inviting. I hope to bring fresh eyes and open ears to decisions that impact our future. I know what it's like to live on a tight budget, and it's important to me to have some assurance that when I hand over my hard-earned money, that it's spent wisely, and I'm sure that that's a concern for everyone who pays their city taxes. I do have a passion for eliminating wasteful spending, protecting citizen rights, and doing the right things for the right reasons. I do believe my education experience and ability to ask the right questions will contribute to thoughtful, sensible decision-making. I think that I'm a highly ethical person with a lot of integrity, and I think that, again, being kind of those fresh eyes, that I have something to offer. So if you agree, please vote for me on Tuesday, November 5th.
Thank you. Mr. Champlin?
Thank you. I want to again thank everyone for coming to this debate or for watching it at home. I also want to thank Nathan and Edith for running. I think that in this race we're well served by good, thoughtful candidates, and I think that the city benefits from that immensely. Back in 2013, in August, my dad passed away after taking care of my mom for the last 3 years of her life, who had Alzheimer's disease. My dad was very active in our community where I grew up back in Ashaway, Rhode Island, as was my grandfather, his father. And his passing made me wonder what I had done to give back to my community and how I could serve more than I already had, which is why I ran in September of that year for my first term as a ward councilor. It's been an incredibly gratifying experience, more so since I was elected back in March to serve as an at-large councilor, which I find really has given me the breadth and the scope and the latitude to be much more deeply involved and more broadly involved in issues such as the ones we've discussed today that are of concern presently to the city, but also to the future of the city. So I hope that you will consider casting one of your ballots for the at-large seats for me. I urge you again to get out and vote on November 5th, and I thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Ms. Banfield? Do you want to say a few words in closing?
I'll let the incumbent go first. You go first, please.
Somebody decide. We have to move.
I just want to say I'm descended from a Samuel Banfield who fought in the Revolution, is on record twice for petitioning for more money for the troops. But the first town meetings in Madison were held in his house, and for years after that, I had another relative who would finish his chores, walk 10 miles to town meeting and go vote. It's very important. I'm appalled at the people who don't vote. So many people have fought and died for that privilege, and I think maybe we should tax people who don't vote. It's appalling.
An important message about voting. Mayor Boulay?
Yes, thank you.
First of all, let me thank the monitor again for hosting us this evening. And I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight and for listening, because you are what actually makes Concord special. I feel that we have made great progress on projects throughout the city in the recent years, but let's be clear that that was a result of vision, planning, and executing. So if you continue to just stay stagnant, if we were to continue to stay stagnant, then I believe we're moving backwards. So we always must be improving, whether it be improving our public safety, improving our infrastructure, improving our economy. We need to move forward, and we need to learn from those things that we've been successful, and we need to grow from those things that have not. So as your mayor, I am committed to working as hard for you as ever. And if you can't tell, I'm energized by tonight. I am. But I need you, and I want you to join me on Election Day, and I want you to join me every other day for the next 2 years to ensure that we have a Concord that is special for our children, our grandchildren, and is special for us as we have it today. So thank you, and I hope I've earned your vote.
All right, thank you very much to the mayoral candidates and at-large candidates. All right, we're going to do another quick change, and we're going to be back soon. We're probably going to run over a tiny bit. I hope that's okay. We have the ward candidates coming up next, so if the ward candidates can make their way up.
a higher rate that they pay. So to offset that, we have been working pretty diligently with Exit 17 and Whitney Road property. That is a potential of 200,000 square feet of development that's being proposed right now. And if that goes through, we're estimating that the assessed value on that could be 35 to 40 million. And then further down the other end of where Whitney Road might end, if in fact you extended it, is the Newspapers of New England or Concord Monitor property. We're talking about additional 100 acres right there. So I can let you do the math, but you can see that we're talking potentially about adding maybe 100 million or so in assessed value to that general area. That's going to be a huge economic driver, but of course we need to do it carefully and sensitively. Unfortunately, Pennacook has been in decades of stagnation, but I think that the investment that the city has made in the downtown and these other developments are going to be a huge help to that.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
I just want to thank everyone that came out, the Concord Monitor, Concord TV, for this opportunity. This is my first time talking on stage, so bear with me. Talking to residents, as I've been door knocking, their main concern is property taxes. I go around and there's lots of houses for sale in Pennacook now, and they've been on the market for a while. They're just not able to sell them in that area because of the high tax rate. I don't have the access that City Council has for those numbers, so I don't know the whole reason on that. But I want to advocate, I want to be an advocate to people in Pennacook to bring to Pennacook what they want, not necessarily what the city thinks they want. Thank you.
Thanks very much. A question for each of you about public transportation, which I think is particularly relevant to the areas that these wards represent. What would you do to increase access to public transportation in the city, which is now pretty limited to buses? And not everybody is going to be taking an Uber or a Lyft. What would you propose? Ms. Madsen?
So you're asking about
How can we improve transportation ways for people to get around in town?
Outside of the busing situation? Wow, I have not.
Or improve busing, or I mean, what do people do who need
one
to
of
be
the
able
things
to...
that I think could be helpful, and actually I had discussed it a little bit at the last meeting that we had, but council meeting was the Greenway Trail could be a large factor in terms of connecting, especially my side of Ward 8, down through into Loudon Road and other areas of the city. I realize that in some senses it's been considered recreation, but for my purposes, I also could consider it for people who are trying to commute, who don't have access to, to their own car, or they don't have, maybe their work schedule is not convenient to the bus schedule. I also think along those terms that, one of the things that's a good idea for us too is to consider along with those bicycling paths as well. So different ways of locomotion, in that way, but the Greenway Trail could have really a large impact on connecting through the city, especially from my side. In the other areas, we do have, that's about the only main trail that I can think of that would go down through. However, I do feel it would be very beneficial.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Pierce?
Thank you. I agree with Gail. I've been out holding my signs on Fisherville Road in mornings and the evenings, and there's a lot of foot traffic. The bus, I believe, looks like it's filled. There's always someone at the bus stop. And I agree with the Greenway and the bike paths, which leads me to one other item in the city. The Fisherville Road has grown. There are bike lanes, both north and south. But they really need to be maintained. I ride a bike, not as much as I should, but the just clearing of the sand and getting those off the trails, off the roadways. The Greenway, the rail trail, if we can get bicycles that want to go into town, get them off the main roads, would be a huge help. There's still, there are a lot of people in the neighborhoods that are bike riders and towing children behind them, and Every once in a while, something happens that's not good, so, but I would like to see us work more on that. Build them, build the bike paths, build the rail trail, the greenways, and maintain them.
Thank you. Mr. Todd?
Thank you. Now, of course, I had to write down a little note, call general services in the morning, make sure the roads are clean and the pathways are clean. But I think that we've heard some excellent comments here from Councilor Manson and Mr. Pierce. I think that they're both actually right on the money. The Merrimack River Greenway Trail is going to provide a lot more than just recreation once that's completed. It's going to be an extremely important component. You know, we have plenty of walkways in the city right now. I'm thinking about the underpass and the walkways that lead to Fort Eddy area, for example, that are hugely trafficked by people who want that option. They want to be able to walk. In the village, I hear about that all the time. People want a walkable village in Pennacook, and that's not just an amenity for them. That's something that they consider to be extremely important. So those are very important options. I think the Greenway Trail, and then certainly we continue to work on improving our bike paths and bike accessibility on our roadways. Every time a roadway now is reconditioned or repaved, resurfaced, we are looking at that issue. And I know that because actually I've been a member of the Transportation Policy Advisory Committee in the city for more than 10 years. In fact, I joined that long before I was councilor as a volunteer representing Pennacook. And I also have been for about that same amount of time a member of the Transportation Policy Subcommittee, where we're looking at public transit and the CAT bus service. So I do want to mention that in addition to the suggestions made, we are always looking in that committee to change the routes, to try to improve them, and to try to provide accessibility. I think that's vitally important. I hear right now, we've got seniors in Pennacook right now who are taking the bus to supermarkets, and then they have to take a taxi cab home. That's just unacceptable. So we need to be able to continue to work toward increasing service and augmenting it, but the ridership needs to be there. That's part of the problem. We do need to have, but I think I agree with Mr. Pierce that the ridership has absolutely improved. The numbers are increasing. We get those numbers at every meeting that we go to, and I think that there's good hope for doing that. Certainly, if we're going to do development at Exit 17, the bus will want it to go there. So that'll be important. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, what do you think?
I do agree with the three of them. It needs to be a safer riding environment if you're on a bike. A lot of accidents have happened. Bikers have gotten hit, not in Pennacook per se, but like down near Main Street as well. There is an issue on the safety thing with buses that I've seen in Pennacook. There's a bus stop right at the circle of the village that causes traffic jams, and I feel is a safety issue, and that stop should be moved somewhere else with a covered place for them to wait safely. A rush hour, that's a bad spot for that bus stop to be. I've had other people mention that to me and asked if I would help to fix that. If I was elected, and I would. I've seen someone's going to get hit there one of these days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Miller, we'll actually start this next one with you, and this is actually going to include all of the Pennacook candidates. This is another question from the audience here. The majority of residents in Pennacook do not want new apartments. So why are they being forced to have new apartments? And Mr. Miller, if you can start us off.
That is a great question. I've actually, when I was, people that asked me to run for city council had that same issue. They want more small business there. They feel bringing in more housing, especially low-income housing. Yes, you want customers for your business, but if they're low income as it is, what kind of customers are they? They feel it's going to bring more crime to Pennacook, and it's just going to create it to be more unsafe. So that was their big issue, is they felt that they were not asked what they wanted, if they wanted.
Do you agree with that sentiment?
What's that?
Do you agree with that sentiment?
Yes. I agree that they feel that they were not asked whether they wanted housing in that tannery site or to wait and get something better there.
Okay. So would you push to limit the amount of new housing in Pennacook?
I think it needs to work for both sides. You can't have just all housing in one town, because then they're going to drive somewhere else to spend their money. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Todd.
Thank you. I think the last point that Mr. Miller makes is actually a very salient one here, that we don't want people to have to drive to employment if they live in Pennacook. We want them to be able to live in Pennacook. But unfortunately, the situation that we have right now is in the city-wide a 1.4% vacancy rate. That basically means that you can't find a place to live. If you're going to try to buy a house, you're going to be outbid. If you're going to try to find an apartment, you need to sleep the night before in front of the landlord's house and try to be able to be the first one in line. It's basically a very difficult situation right now. There's a few issues. The tannery, first of all, that was a situation where we had a blighted area, and if the city had not been involved and stepped in and assisted with that, what you would see right now basically would be a crumbled building on a Superfund site. Because of the city's involvement, that blight has now been cleaned up. Basically, one of the problems, again, with the stagnation for decades that has occurred in Pennacook since industrial businesses have left is that there really isn't a lot of foot traffic going on in Pennacook. I'm not going to sit here and try to lie to you about that. We've all seen that there's been a deficiency there. And so in order to decrease that, what the businesses downtown right now in Pennacook want, and what businesses that would want to come in would desire and need, is more foot traffic and more vehicle traffic. Well, there's only 7,000 cars average daily traffic on Village Street every day, and most major establishments look for something on the lines of 20,000 plus. I'm not saying that we want to bring 20,000 cars to Village Street, but I'm just trying to point out that you can wish all you want, but you're not going to just get businesses to come downtown unless there's a critical mass of people who are living down there. So all of these elements kind of work together, and that's what I've been working on. Economic development and business expansion at Exit 17, that's one area. That, I believe, will flow over to the downtown Village area once that gets underway and completed. Continuing to work with affordable housing and other types of housing. We need all kinds of housing in Pennacook and throughout the city. And then finally, jobs, as was mentioned earlier, is another important factor, and all of those three together go hand in hand. And we have more jobs coming into Pennacook at both the Beatty Building, which is now full occupancy, and the Concord Monitor printing presses at the former Revco site. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pierce.
Well, while Ward 2 doesn't include downtown Pennacook, again, back to the point of having the Merrimack Valley School District, I agree with Councilor Todd. I remember a while ago I was at a sandwich shop in Concord, and the woman working there said that a new restaurant had opened in Pennacook, and she hoped it did well. And I said, well, from where will this restaurant get their customers? And it gets back to the economic development question of what begets what. If you have people, you're going to have business come in. If you have the business come in, they have their employees. So there's this circle of life, if you will, that one sort of gets the other. If I was on the council when this vote came up, I would have voted to have that housing put in, because if Pennacook is going to be walkable and it's going to have the amenities, then you're going to need people and you're going to need residents. This happened in Concord some 25 years ago when I was on the chamber board. They talked about bringing people downtown and the vacant second stories. Now you see a huge apartment buildings going on and renovations of old buildings and so on and so forth, and it's bringing people downtown, and we all heard that before on how successful downtown is. It's going to become even more successful because of investment and because there are people there.
Ms. Batson?
Sure. I actually have a couple of... Okay. So one of the things that I had been thinking about with that is that the concern with housing, we talk about, a lot of the people have said that they think that it's going to bring a lot more children into the school district. One of the articles that I'd read recently actually was really good from New Hampshire Business Review, was talking about that the enrollments from K through 12 have gone down 10% in the last 10 years? Yeah, in the last 10 years. And that the declining birth rates, et cetera, slower population. But the occupied housing units actually generate a 0.33 on the students, which I think that there's a misconception that every unit is going to bring something, negative or bad. But I think I would go back to the concept, what we've talked about before, is we prefer, as a council, we've preferred always to try to do mixed use, but we couldn't get mixed use at the tannery site. We had tried to get, people had told us many times that they wanted a grocery store, and we couldn't get a grocery store there because there isn't enough volume for their business plan to make a profit. They won't put one in until we reach critical mass. I'm not sure what the actual critical mass is, but we're not there yet. So while I understand that the idea, is that they want something different, they want a mixed use, or they want more business and they want less people, I think we have to get the people to get the business. And in this case, as Earl said before, chicken or egg, we don't really know how that's going to work, but we've already tried getting businesses in there without the people. Now we're trying this route, and hopefully it will happen.
Hopefully. Thank you. We're going to have one rapid-fire round on a big question and then go to closing arguments so that everybody gets their chance to be on TV and meet the audience. So the question is, and we'll start, Ms. Madsen, with you, and a minute or shorter on the big question of what's your vision for I-93? What do you want to see it do for your ward?
I-93 has a lot of considerations. I've been to many of the meetings to help with the envisionment. I've been gratified to see that people are getting up and speaking directly about their concerns, and I feel that the mayor actually touched upon it. I really want people to come out and speak and see what they're trying to do so that you can affect what's happening, and it's not too big or too late. We really need to get involved. One of the things that has always struck me about Concord, as much as I love it, is that we've really neglected the waterway along the riverway, and we possibly could be, we can affect that in a way that we can retain those aspects of development for the river. And I want to see people being able to come down 93 to look, honestly, at my exit has so much potential right now. I can't tell you, but wouldn't it be lovely to see, a park there with kids playing, a sport, with a restaurant there and a bank there, and people go, hey, let's just pull off here. We're going further, but let's just pull off here. Let's watch this for a little while and have a great time. That's the kind of thing that I want to see. I don't want to see, fences with overgrown trees. Right. I want to see people, an inviting spot, an inviting space that we can do that. I think we can mindfully do or affect 93's expansion to help us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Pierce?
I couldn't agree more. I've long been an advocate of access to the river. I mean, if you think when 93 was built, no one wanted to get near the Merrimack River. But a lot has been done, and it's cleaned up. It's a great resource. I can't stress enough. I've been to a few of the meetings and looked at the original plans and the options. Yes, there'll be some heartache and some pain, but opening up the city, I have a vision of Pleasant Street extension and going down to the river, and they talk about a footbridge over to the east side and developing that over there, and the bicycles, and you have this nirvana type view of what should be, but it can be really something, and it is for the next 50 to 100 years, and we all need to get involved and put our 2 cents in.
Thank you. Mr. Todd?
Thank you. I'm very familiar with this. I've been working on this particular issue for 20 years or so. I was involved in the vision for Concord 2020 and actually became president of the board of that nonprofit. And we worked with several folks in the city. It was a wonderful board, and part of the reason that organization developed was because of concern that the community had for what will happen to Concord if I-93 gets widened. The project was shelved. Concord 2020 pretty much did a lot of great work and then disbanded. Now the issue is back before us. I think that I agree with that, certainly everything that was said here so far on the panel, but I also want to stress that there is the element of economic development that I think the prior panel had discussed that is important to remember in this. If this highway is not done with sensitivity to Concord's future development needs, we're going to miss a lot of opportunities in the downtown corridor, and it's going to be a huge impact on us. And I don't think we should, frankly, allow that to happen. I mentioned my work on the Transportation Policy Advisory Committee. There have been plenty of reports and recommendations. Basically, we just need the DOT to incorporate them into their final plan, but I'm confident we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Mr. Miller?
I don't really know much about the I-93 expansion. I haven't looked into it too much. I do know, if I'm a councilor in Ward 1, though, I want to focus on my ward first and to see what, to fight for them. This seems more like a downtown city issue, which wouldn't be as much a concern for me because that's not who elected me into office. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're on to closing statements. So I think we'll start with Ms. Mattson at the end, please.
So I've been privileged to be a part of a lot of things that I think have brought our city forward. I remember when I first moved here 30-something years ago that there really wasn't a lot, and most people went to Manchester to get things. The stores were closed, and so I've been very happy to be a part of the Main Street revitalization, but some of the things, especially in my ward, that have happened is the community center and our fire training facility on the old Turnpike Road. Our airport lobby has been revitalized. The renovation of that has made, I think, us look a lot better. We've had presidential candidates that come in and fly in there, and that's their first impression of Concord. And I'd like it to be a little bit better than that. So we've done some of those. We've done Keach Park improvements and the paving of Loudon Road that we've retained for, 4 lanes for, as the voters told us that's what they wanted. Argentech, and has moved into Terrell Park now, and we've got other renovations going on and businesses coming in. I think that we are at that tipping point where I think the mayor said it earlier, we've set the table. We're almost there of where we can make things so much better for us and for the future generations, but to have those opportunities. And so I look at things like Terrell Park that we have coming in the Greenway Trail and that possibility of 13 or 17. We really have so much potential, and I just don't want us to I'd like to be part of that, and I'd like to keep the momentum going. So I hope you vote for me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pierce.
Thank you again for the opportunity. I worked years ago with Mayor Bill Verino, and one of the things I picked up from him was he always reminded councilors that you represent your ward first and the city second. And that's what I would do, is represent the voters and the residents of Ward 2. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention we're going to work really hard in trying to get Bog Road paved. I know my predecessor, Alan Hirschlag, worked hard on that, and I want to thank Alan for his service and the help he's given me during this campaign. But I'm here to serve. I'm fully retired now. I spent most of my professional life as a manager, managing people, managing large budgets. I look at, beyond the safety net that the city needs to provide to our residents. There's also making sure we get a return on our investment. It doesn't need to be immediate, but we want to make sure that we're spending your tax dollars the right way for the right reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Todd.
Thank you. Once again, thanks to everybody and the Monitor for this opportunity to speak with you here tonight. My feeling is that I'm actually really very excited about what's been going on in Pennacook. And I would be thrilled to be reelected because I would like to see through a lot of the things that we've started and the work that I've been doing since I was elected and started serving in 2014 for all of you. My feeling is that although you certainly do serve your ward, you also serve the entire city. Every year the city council gets together, just like all of you do when you get together at home, sit around a table and try to decide on your budgets and what's important and what's not important. And we do that for the city, for the whole city. We don't divide the city budget into wards. we make a unified vote and decision on the entire budget for everyone. And so, but I certainly will say that I listened to Pennacook folks very carefully, and what they told me overwhelmingly was work on economic development and work on the tax base. And that's what I've done. I've been coming up with a comprehensive approach that I think is going to do that. We're talking about increasing economic development in the Whitney Road area. We're talking about increasing housing opportunities at the Tannery and the Catch developments, and also encouraging adding jobs in the community, as I mentioned earlier. So it's jobs, housing, and business development, and all of them are interdependent. You can't have one without the others. We can grow in Pennacook, but we don't have to change, and we don't have to give up our identity to do that. And I'm confident that we can get there with the community's help. So I would ask for, I've had the honor and pleasure of serving Concord and Ward 1 for many years, and I'm asking for your votes to re-elect me so we can stay the course and continue the progress. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Miller.
Again, I want to thank everyone for coming out. It's a great honor and a great opportunity here tonight. I've ran for state rep twice. Unfortunately, I lost both times, but I've learned a lot on the way. And I honestly wasn't going to run for city council this time, but I had a few residents ask me to, and I was reluctant to. And but then I was at home one night, and there must be a reason why they're asking me to. There must be things they're unhappy with. So I went asking around as I door knock, and they feel abandoned. They feel that downtown Concord gets service and gets the funding before they get improvements where they are. That's just how they feel. And I want to fight and be a voice for Pennacook and the people of Pennacook, not city of Concord, but Pennacook. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and we thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone that came out. All right, that wraps it up. Have a good night, everybody.
Don't forget to vote.
Right.
November 5th.